The sound of a basketball thudding against the cracked pavement fills the empty court. It's a rhythm, a steady, determined beat. Marcus Reed, 14 years old, stands at the free throw line, his worn-out sneakers planted firmly, his body swaying slightly with each dribble. His faded Chicago Bulls jersey, once vibrant, is now dull from time and sweat. But none of that matters. He inhales deeply, eyes locked on the rusted hoop, and with one smooth motion, he rises and releases the shot. The ball soars, suspended in the air for just a second before swishing cleanly through the net. Marcus exhales, shoulders relaxing, if only for a moment. This court, it isn't just concrete and metal, it's escape, it's survival. It's the one place where the weight of the world doesn't press down on him. Stay out of trouble, Marcus. His mother's voice echoes in his head, soft but firm, a reminder wrapped in worry. Vanessa Reed, a nurse who works long shifts at the hospital, doesn't have time for nonsense, least of all from the world that doesn't see her son for who he truly is. Marcus knows why she says it. He knows that in their neighborhood, boys like him aren't just seen as kids with dreams. He knows the world will call him things he isn't. Knows that, no matter how fast he runs, some things will always chase him. But here, on the court, he's not a statistic, not a stereotype. He's just Marcus. The ball bounces again, one dribble, then another. A few kids sit on the sidelines, watching him play but keeping their distance. They used to join in, running up for rebounds, laughing, calling out plays. Not anymore. Not after the last time. The court used to be filled with noise, the echo of sneakers squeaking, the clatter of the metal chain net. Now it's quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from experience. Marcus doesn't notice. He's too focused on the basket. He steps back, spinning the ball in his hands, preparing for his next shot. A low rumble in the distance cuts through the quiet. The ball leaves Marcus's fingertips, arcing toward the hoop just as a police cruiser pulls into the lot. The kids on the sidelines shift uneasily, glancing at each other but not saying a word. Marcus still doesn't notice. His shot lands, another perfect swish. He jogs to retrieve the ball, his thoughts already on his next move. But then, he hears it. The low, steady hum of an idling engine. Something changes in the air, something thick and suffocating. Marcus turns his head slightly, his eyes catching the unmistakable blue and white of a police car. The door swings open. A heavy boot lands on the pavement, crunching gravel beneath it. Officer Rick Dalton. No need for introductions. Everyone in the neighborhood knows his name. He stands tall, arms stiff, his gaze sweeping over the court with something unreadable. His presence alone shifts the atmosphere, drawing invisible lines of tension through the space. Nobody moves, nobody speaks. The only sound is the faint creak of the cruiser cooling under the sun. Marcus swallows hard, fingers gripping the ball just a little tighter. The shot he just made. It might as well have never happened. The game is over now. Dalton isn't looking at the hoop. He's looking at Marcus. His hand rests on his belt, fingers tapping. A slow, deliberate movement. Marcus has seen it before. Seen it in news stories, heard it in whispered conversations. He knows exactly what comes next. And then, Dalton speaks. His voice is low, measured, authoritative. "Hey you, what are you doing here?" The ball rolls to a stop by Marcus's feet. His heartbeat quickens, but his face stays calm. "Just playing, sir." The steady rhythm of the ball bouncing comes to an abrupt stop. A sharp voice cuts through the air, each word laced with suspicion. "Hey, you there! What are you doing?" Marcus's fingers tighten around the ball, his heart giving a small but noticeable thud. His instinct tells him to keep calm, keep respectful. He turns slowly, his voice measured but uncertain. "Just playing, sir." Dalton's gaze drifts from Marcus's face to his jersey, then to his scuffed sneakers. A few seconds of heavy silence pass between them. Dalton's eyes narrow, his chin lifting slightly as if deciding something. "There's been vandalism nearby, broken windows, graffiti." His voice sharpens. "You know anything about that?" Marcus's brows furrow, confusion flickering across his face. No, sir. I've been here the whole time. Dalton's head tilts, his skepticism thick in the air. You got ID? Marcus hesitates, a flicker of tension tightening his chest. No, sir, I didn't bring it. I was just playing. A slow smirk creeps onto Dalton's lips. Convenient. Without warning, Dalton's hand snaps out, gripping Marcus by the jersey. Marcus stiffens as he's pulled slightly forward, his breath catching. The worn fabric stretches under the officer's grip, a silent but undeniable threat. A murmur ripples through the kids watching nearby. Marcus's body stays still, locked in place by instinct and fear. Dalton's grip tightens, his voice lowering to a near growl. You think I'm just going to take your word for it? Marcus swallows hard, his mother's voice echoing in his head. Stay calm. Don't give them a reason. But staying calm feels impossible when his body is being held in place. A kid on the sidelines fumbles with his phone, raising it slowly. Where are they going? Others shift closer to the fence, watching with cautious eyes. Marcus takes a small step back, his breath unsteady. Sir, please, I didn't do anything. Dalton's grip remains. His body leans in slightly, the space between them closing. No ID, out here alone, looks suspicious to me. Marcus's knees feel weak, but he forces himself to stay upright. The whispers grow louder, a soft wave of unease moving through the crowd. A woman's voice is barely audible, but Marcus hears it. That boy's scared. This ain't right. Dalton glances at the phones, now openly pointed at him. His jaw tightens, but his grip doesn't loosen. You fit the description, kid. That's enough for me. Marcus's breath hitches. Fit the description? What description? A rising panic grips his chest, but he clamps down on it. I told you, I've just been practicing. Enough! Dalton's voice cuts through Marcus's words, his other hand shifting toward his cuffs. The murmurs rise into low protest. A man steps forward, hesitant but firm. Come on, officer, the kid's just playing ball. Dalton's head snaps toward the man, his posture stiff. Step back, this isn't your concern. Marcus feels the walls closing in. The court, his sanctuary, now feels like a trap. His mother's voice whispers again. Don't give them a reason. But what reason had he given? Playing basketball? Wearing a jersey? Existing? The weight of every story he's ever heard, about boys like him stopped for nothing, crashes onto his chest. His eyes dart toward the onlookers, silent pleas resting behind them. Nobody moves, nobody steps in. Dalton's voice drops, slow and deliberate. You need to cooperate, kid, or this gets worse. Cooperate? With what? A crime he didn't commit? A system already against him? He clenches his fists, willing himself not to break. The crowd has grown now, a mix of fear, anger, and hesitation. Several phones are up, recording every second. Dalton notices, his jaw flexing, but his grip stays firm. He knows he's being watched, but that doesn't mean he'll stop. And Marcus knows it too. That's what terrifies him the most. A woman murmurs, Someone needs to call somebody. A man mutters, Yeah, but who? The cops? The tension thickens, suffocating the space between them. Marcus swallows hard, his pulse thundering in his ears. He's alone in this. And yet, he's never been more visible. A distant hum grows louder, cutting through the thick tension. Marcus's legs threaten to buckle beneath him, his breath shallow, his world shrinking to the tight grip of Officer Dalton's hand on his jersey. Then, a sudden hush falls over the crowd as a sleek black SUV rolls to a stop. The door swings open, a towering figure steps out. A gasp ripples through the onlookers, voices rising in stunned murmurs. Is that Michael Jordan? Dalton's grip loosens just slightly, his head turning toward the new presence. Marcus barely dares to breathe. Jordan doesn't rush. He moves with purpose, each step deliberate, his expression unreadable. He doesn't have to speak. His presence alone shifts the atmosphere, an undeniable force commanding respect. Dalton straightens, his hand still clenching Marcus's jersey, but now he's visibly tense. The crowd stirs, their hesitation beginning to fade. Marcus remains still, trapped between fear and disbelief. Jordan finally stops a few feet away, his gaze locked on Dalton. His voice, calm but sharp, cuts through the air. "What's going on here?" Dalton clears his throat. His grip tightens, like he's trying to regain lost control. His eyes flicker between Jordan and the recording phones, calculation flickering across his face. He squares his shoulders, forcing a mask of authority back into place. "This kid was causing trouble," he says, his voice firm but not as certain as before. Jordan doesn't blink. His eyes shift to Marcus. He sees the fear, the exhaustion, the silent plea beneath it all. His jaw tightens. "You sure about that, officer?" Dalton's posture stiffens. The shift has already begun. Jordan steps closer. His voice doesn't rise, but it doesn't have to, because all I see is a kid trying to hoop. The crowd leans in, sensing the momentum changing. Dalton's eyes dart to the phones, recording his every move. The tension thickens, the space between them shrinking. Marcus, still in Dalton's grasp, watches in stunned silence. Jordan's stare doesn't waver. His presence doesn't falter. "If this were a white kid in the suburbs, would you be gripping his jersey like that?" A murmur ripples through the crowd. Not just agreement, but awakening. Dalton swallows hard. His confidence begins to slip. Dalton forces a scoff, trying to recover. "It's standard procedure." Jordan tilts his head, his eyes narrowing. Standard for who? The words land like a weight against Dalton's chest. He opens his mouth, then closes it, searching for control. Jordan doesn't blink, because this looks a whole lot like profiling to me. Dalton's shoulders twitch, his stance shifting. The crowd grows bolder, voices rising in unison. Dalton can feel it slipping, his control, his authority, his justification. Jordan folds his arms, his voice steady. "Nah, officer, this is where you back down." The air is thick with something unspoken, something unmovable. Dalton hesitates. His breath is uneven. The crowd steps closer, their energy shifting, not just recording, but engaging. A voice rings out. "Yeah, let the kid go." Another follows. "We see you, officer." Dalton's eyes dart between Jordan, the crowd, and the cameras. He knows he's lost control of the moment. The pressure climbs, a heat he can't escape. His grip on Marcus weakens, but pride keeps him frozen. Dalton's voice drops, firm and final. "Let him go." Dalton exhales sharply, his pride warring with reality. His fingers finally release Marcus's jersey. The boy stumbles back slightly, his body still tense, still shaken, but free. The crowd erupts, not in cheers, but in a heavy, victorious silence. The moment is etched in their minds, recorded from every angle. Dalton turns to Jordan, his jaw tight, his face burning with unspoken rage. Jordan doesn't smirk, he doesn't gloat, he just stares. The lesson has already been taught. Marcus, finally breathing again, looks up at his hero. Jordan gives him a slight nod, a silent reassurance. The crowd slowly disperses, but the weight of what just happened lingers in the air. A second police car pulls into the lot. The energy shifts. The crowd goes silent, eyes locking onto the new figure stepping out. Sergeant Robert Gaines. Unlike Dalton, his reputation is different. He doesn't bark orders. He doesn't reach for his belt. His eyes move from Jordan to Marcus to the dozens of recording phones. Then they land on Dalton. His voice is calm but firm. "Let the kid go, Rick." Dalton's jaw tightens, his face hardening. He doesn't want to move. But he's outnumbered, outmatched. He glances at Jordan, then at Gaines. He knows. The pressure of the cameras, the witnesses, the weight of his own actions. There's no way out. His fingers unclench from Marcus's jersey. Marcus staggers slightly, the tension in his body finally releasing. For a moment, there's nothing but silence. Then, a single clap. Then another. The crowd erupts. not in anger but in relief. Dalton turns away, his presence suddenly smaller, his authority dismantled, his power stripped. Jordan kneels beside Marcus. His voice is calm, steady. "You okay, kid?" Marcus nods weakly, his body still tense, his mind still racing. Jordan studies him for a long moment. Then he reaches out and ruffles his hair, just slightly. "You keep playing." Marcus clutches his basketball tighter, a new weight in his grip, a new kind of strength in his chest. Jordan's voice is quiet but unshakable. "Don't let anyone take your shot." For the first time, Marcus doesn't just hear the words, he feels them. He looks up, meeting Jordan's gaze with something new, courage. His voice, though small, is steady. "Yes, sir." Within hours, the video spreads like wildfire. Justice for Marcus trends nationwide. News anchors repeat his name. His story becomes a conversation, a movement. Dalton is placed under investigation. His past conduct is questioned. For the first time, his actions have consequences. Activists, athletes, public figures speak out. Jordan takes to TV. "This isn't just about one kid," he says, his voice carrying weight. "It's about all the kids who never got their justice." A movement is sparked, one that won't be ignored. Jordan announces a new mentorship program, a way to give kids like Marcus a real chance. Marcus is the first name on the list, but he isn't just playing for himself anymore. He's playing for every kid who was told they didn't belong. That night, Marcus sits on his bed, turning the ball in his hands. He whispers the words again. "Don't let anyone take your shot." He stands, faces the mirror, replays the moment in his mind. He lifts the ball. A deep breath, a flick of the wrist, a perfect release. The ball swishes through an imaginary hoop. A quiet moment, a new beginning.